Madam, I'm extremely grateful to the honourable members of the House who have in a large measure supported this legislation and also made some very valuable suggestions. I'll just respond briefly to some of the points which have been raised. But before I do that, Madam, a very serious charge was made against the legislative process that there is a gender bias.
Yes.
So the rules of construction in the General Clauses Act actually inherently indicate that when they say that words importing the masculine gender shall be taken to include females. So the rules of construction itself on all legislation itself from the very beginning, and we have been legislating on basis of this. All legislation has been on basis of this construction in the General Clauses Act that masculine always includes the females.
But how old is it?
1897.
So a lot of water has flown under the bridge. So the high time you better change it.
There is a three-letter word which has H and E in it.
Even otherwise.
Madam, one of the very significant points which was made by General Roy Chaudhary, he actually questioned the rationale behind this bill. And before this Honourable House takes a vote on this bill, I must endeavour to explain what a rationale behind this legislation is. You have a group of organized professionals without any element of social security, and you can take it from the experience of some of our colleagues here who are far more experienced in the legal profession than me, that a very large number of them are anything but affluent. In fact, if you travel down to the districts and the tehsils in the country, you'll find a number of them who have actually no savings to rely back on. And the rationale behind this legislation is the same rationale which is behind any social security scheme. Why do we say let's have provident fund, let us have gratuity, let us have group insurances in cases of any section of society? We have it because these are amounts which belong to that section of the society, but there is a facilitating legislation, and that legislation facilitates that that amount is collected and is secured on their behalf so that at an appropriate time it comes to the benefit of that section. That is the real rationale. And that is when some of the members, Mr. Nariman and others who supported this legislation said, this is an amount which is going to be largely contributed by the advocates themselves. The General doubted whether they would themselves not contribute it and compel their clients to do it. There is also a corresponding penal provision. If you did that, you lose the benefits of the membership itself. So we've tried to ensure and make sure that there is no legal compulsion that anybody can be compelled to pay this as far as the litigants are concerned, and this is an amount which the lawyers themselves would have to pay. The second, Madam, a question raised by some members, and I think I must once again explain, I endeavored to explain it in the beginning, because the success or failure of this actually depends upon three factors. The one factor which I indicated, that some of the state legislations did not have an element of compulsion in it in becoming members. And therefore, if some became members and some didn't become members, the schemes did not succeed. The second, we have tried to make that changes in this legislation by making membership compulsory. The second question is as to what the sources of fund would be, how large would be the corpus, and what are the kind of benefits that the members of the bar would be entitled from it. Now, if we have a fair reading of this legislation, there are several sources of funds. And these several sources of funds are not related, as Mr. Sibal mentioned, to merely membership of a bar association. Whether the Supreme Court Bar Association has 200 or 500 or 1,000 active members is completely irrelevant. There are different sources, and the principal sources include amounts which will be contributed by the Bar Council, because the state bar councils are going to administer this fund. 20% of the enrollment fee. This is an experiment they've had in the state legislations also. It has not exactly been a failure as far as those contributions are concerned. The administration of this fund is essentially by those committees where the bar councils are in fact overrepresented. There are voluntary contributions which would be voluntary. I quite appreciate the suggestion Mr. Nariman has made. There is an provision, enabling provision, that donations can be made, contributions can be made by other sections, including governments, but that's only an enabling provision. But the other three principal sources, one being the bar councils, the other being the the admission fee, the annual membership, and most important, the recurring income, which will be the largest source of the income from the welfare stamps itself. Now, with regard to the welfare stamps, there is already a provision that the amounts could be increased. There is an upper cap of rupees 25 mentioned by the governments depending upon how much money is required, so we don't have to come back to Parliament. The Parliament in fact delegates that authority to the appropriate government. Initially it is 5 rupees in every district court. And therefore when we understate the figures, we also must keep in mind the volume of cases in the district court. The annual filing in the district courts across the country is almost 1 crore of cases. And therefore 5 rupees on either side itself is an annual corpus from the district court of an amount which could be as high as 10 crore of rupees. For all other authorities, Mrs. Dubey mentioned that what about wakalatnamas in other authorities, it's all mentioned. All other authorities, High Court, Supreme Court, where also there are a large number of cases, the amount is rupees 10, so 10 by either side. The corpus therefore is a reasonable corpus. If it is insufficient, there is a mechanism by which this could be increased. Therefore, if the corpus across the country is several crores of rupees every year, it is this money which is then to be invested into various welfare schemes, insurance schemes, etc. And what is the amount that the lawyers would be entitled to?
Madam, if I may, Honorable Minister, will just speak for a second. You mentioned that wakalatnamas will be filed by both sides. Is it the government's position that when the government defends a litigation or moves a court, government too, along with all individual officers on behalf of whom the separate wakalatnama is filed in each wakalatnama, will buy a
If my
stamp
learned
worth
friend has
rupees
any
10?
suggestion, he'll certainly look into that question.
Yes.
If
No,
my
because
learned
that's
friend has
very
any-
important from the point of view of the fund.
Yes, yes, I quite appreciate the suggestion which my learned friend is making. We will quite take those considerations, suggestions into mind. But therefore, the quantum from this fund, which is to be contributed by lawyers itself, is not restricted to the 200 active practitioners of the Supreme Court. The illustration Mr. Sibbal gave, but the amounts could be reasonable. In fact, the Kerala experiment, which was given, and Kerala is one of the states where it has been extremely successfully implemented. And successfully implemented on these kind of amounts, invested over a period of time, the welfare fund has been well governed, where people, as he said, at the end of their practice, are getting larger amounts itself. As far as the benefit schemes are concerned, it is not confined to the 30,000 mentioned in the schedule alone. That 30,000 is only a token amount. Section 19 is a case which deals with various kinds of illnesses, sicknesses. 21 deals with cessation of practice. For whatever reason, the amounts that you are entitled to, that amount is a token amount that's mentioned in the schedule. Depending upon the large corpus available, that amount can also be increased. The schedules are amendable by the appropriate government itself. If in a given state the amounts available, the corpus available is larger, that amount itself can be raised. I have a list of at least 8 states. We have taken, in fact, the case study of all the states, and most of the states mention the amounts mentioned in this schedule itself. And then section 24, which is the principal amount, and the object and the suggestion which Mrs. Dubey made. What about women? Supposing a maternity, a lady lawyer is out of practice for a couple of months on account of maternity absence, itself has a provision in section 24. It provides for group insurances, it provides for medical, educational facilities of dependents. Any scheme which is framed by the state committee, it is those committees which frame the scheme with the states, the trust committees, and these will be all factors which those committees will have to take into consideration. There is also a facility as far as help to young lawyers for books is concerned. For common amenities is concerned, 10% of the fund is to be earmarked. Particularly, somebody said the high courts and the Supreme Court have better amenities. What about subordinate courts? It's meant exclusively for subordinate courts. And all other schemes, including benefits which are to be given in the event of death to the dependents, are all within subclauses E and F. That is how it has been operated upon in the various states, that in the event of death, whatever is the residual fund, how it is operated upon through insurances and through other corpuses available with this trust committee is available there. Therefore, the different kinds of payments which would be available are in the event of sickness, in the event of cessation of practice, in the event of medical benefits, purchase of books, common amenities, death and other schemes which are formulated by the state committees. But as Mr. Sibal and others rightly mentioned, this would essentially depend on what is the size of the corpus which is available, and the size of corpus available, considering the number of the voluminous number of litigations in this country, is expected to be reasonable to start off with, and ultimately we have the flexibility of increasing those amounts if we find that a further amount itself is required. Madam, several other suggestions were made.
There was about the crushes also she mentioned, regarding the lady lawyer.
But that's all, that will all be a part of the, because the authority is with that state level committee. And each state level committee, madam, the composition itself is essentially lawyers. The Advocate General will be the chairman of the committee. The government of the state government has only two officers, the Law Secretary and the Home Secretary, the chairman of the Bar Council, the government pleader, two advocates nominated by the Bar Council, the Secretary of the Bar Council. There would be at least 4 representatives of the Bar Council, plus the Advocate General, government pleaders who would constitute this body. They are the ones who are going to administer this fund. They are the ones who are going to sell these stamps and to whom the corpus of all these stamps, etc., would be available. So, I am sure some of them would be women also.
But these creches, can't the courts provide these creches where there are more women? As in the, as they have in the companies where there are certain number of women employees, then it is compulsory for them to have creches?
But
You can consider this in
it's
future.
a suggestion which
Ah.
it's a suggestion which merits consideration. Therefore, madam, the question with regard to desirability of this fund, it's a social security scheme. There would be a reasonable corpus, and then it essentially depends on how it is administered and how we are able to increase these amounts itself. Some other suggestions were made with regard to the senior advocates itself. I may explain, since it's a question which was specifically raised. One suggestion has been made that why should the affluent section amongst the advocates be entitled to the benefit of the social security? Therefore, when a meeting was held with the Bar Council of India and various representatives of bar associations, a suggestion which emanated from them itself was, could this section be excluded? And therefore, it was mentioned that they pay an amount of 1,000 rupees because that's an amount which is very nominal for them every year. They are excluded from section 19, section 21, and from 3 of the provisions of section 24, but they are entitled to the benefits of the collective provisions of section 24 as per the schemes which will be framed. So the exclusion is with regard to 3 clauses of section 24 and not with regard to the other 3 clauses of section 24, and it is for that benefit that they are expected to pay an amount which is in fact a very small amount, considering the section of senior advocates itself would not mind paying this. Mr. Nariman's suggestion is that they would probably be willing to pay much larger amounts itself. A suggestion was made to include bar associations into this committee. We have specifically considered it. It has also been considered in the states. We found it difficult to include that suggestion for the reason that there are in several states hundreds of bar associations. You have the Bar Association of the High Court, each district has a bar association, each income tax bar has a bar association, the sales tax lawyers have a bar association, each bar is a bar association. Therefore, if you started searching for which one to include, we'll run into a lot of difficulties. These are all voluntary bodies, and therefore to confine it to the statutory body called the Bar Council of the state probably was considered more appropriate, because the Bar Council covers everybody, and that is why all those lawyers who are members of bar associations are also members of the Bar Council itself, and that is why the bar associations have been kept out. We really didn't want to allow anybody to pick and choose which bar associations to be brought into this. Madam, it is with this objective that this legislation has been brought. I am extremely grateful to the honourable members for the very valuable suggestions they have given, and I commend to this honourable House that this law be accepted.
Thank you.